All right. Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive with us.
Always a pleasure to be back.
Last time, remember, we really got into the nuts and bolts of organizational structures.
Yeah.
All those different ways companies can be set up, like flat organizations, the tall hierarchies, all that.
Exactly. Laying the groundwork. And today we get to see those structures, actually in motion.
I like it.
See how communication flows within them.
Yeah.
Because honestly, that affects everyone involved. Not just the folks at the top, but
Oh, absolutely.
it even matters to you listening right now.
Totally. See, I used to think communication in a company was this, natural thing that just kind of happened.
He evolves organically.
But our deep dive today, we're using, get this, a GCSE Business Studies textbook.
Okay.
And honestly, some of the stuff in there, it's really making me rethink things.
It's amazing, isn't it, how sometimes going back to those
It is.
textbook basics can really illuminate
Totally.
what's happening in the real world.
For sure. It points out pros and cons to different structures, things I had never even considered before.
Right. It's eye-opening. To kick things off, I think it's helpful to define those basic communication flows.
Yeah. The directions, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like upward communication. That's when information's going, from the employees up to management, sharing ideas, maybe raising concerns with your boss, that sort of thing.
Okay, so feedback, suggestions, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Then you got downward communication, which is basically the opposite. Instructions, feedback, flowing from the top down to the teams.
All right, makes sense. So directions from the boss, important updates, keeping everyone in the loop.
Exactly. And then there's that all-important horizontal communication.
Oh, yeah, the side-to-side stuff?
Yeah, the peer-to-peer.
Right.
All about collaboration between colleagues at the same level.
I remember when I was working on this project, right? We had these daily check-ins.
Okay.
Just to, make sure everyone was on the same page, that kind of thing.
Perfect example. So now let's imagine these flows, right? But within a flat hierarchy.
Fewer layers.
Yeah.
Right. So theoretically, upward and downward communication should be easier.
You would think, right?
Yeah. Less red tape.
Less bureaucracy, yeah. But here's the thing.
What's that?
It's not always that simple. Because if everyone's kind of on the same level,
right,
it can almost get too chaotic. You have too many voices all trying to be heard at the same time.
So horizontal communication could actually be a challenge in that kind of setup.
It definitely can be. Imagine trying to have a conversation, like a serious conversation, in a really crowded room.
Oh, yeah. Good luck getting your point across.
Exactly. It's not just about the amount of communication happening. It's about making sure the right messages are getting through clearly and to the right people.
That makes sense. So it's not always a given that a flat structure means communication is going to be smooth sailing.
Not necessarily.
Interesting. Okay, so what about the other end of the spectrum? Those tall hierarchies, right, with lots of layers. Wouldn't that just slow everything down, like messages getting stuck in a bottleneck?
It definitely can. Picture this. You have a great idea or a concern, right?
Yeah.
But it has to climb its way up through 5 different levels of management just to reach the person who can actually make a decision.
It'd be like playing a never-ending game of telephone.
Exactly. And by the time it gets to the top, who knows what the original message even was? And downward communication, it faces the same hurdles. Trying to get clear instructions and feedback all the way down the chain. Not easy.
Yeah, no, I can see that being a real headache. But wouldn't those smaller team sizes within a tall hierarchy actually make horizontal communication easier?
That's a great point.
Less people to coordinate with, less chance of things getting mixed up.
You're absolutely right. It's like each department becomes its own little communication hub. Really emphasizes that, again, each structure has its own communication pros and cons. No perfect system,
Right. So we've got these flows going up, down, and across. But then there's another layer to consider, isn't there? Centralized versus decentralized. How do those structures affect communication?
At the heart of it, the difference is about who gets to make the decisions.
Okay, that makes sense. So in a centralized structure, most of the decision-making power is at the top.
Exactly. It's all happening at headquarters, with leadership calling the shots. Now, that can be great for consistency. Everyone's on the same page, the brand stays consistent, but it can be really, really slow.
Oh, I can only imagine the frustration. Waiting weeks for headquarters to approve a simple decision. That would drive me crazy.
Right. And that highlights one of the big downsides of centralized communication. It can be really demotivating for employees who feel like they have No say, no control over their work. But on the flip side, like I said, clear chain of command, you know who's responsible for what.
Yeah, so there's order, but maybe at the cost of speed and some creativity.
Hmm.
What about decentralized then? Is that where things get a little more, well, wild?
It can be. In a decentralized structure, the power to make decisions is spread out, it's distributed, giving more autonomy to those individual teams and departments.
Oh, so they've got more freedom to do their own thing.
Yeah, much more. It really empowers employees, they feel trusted to make decisions, and it can lead to much faster responses to changes in the market because you're not waiting for approval from the top.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that lead to inconsistencies, like different teams all pulling in different directions?
It's definitely a risk. That's why communication becomes even more important in a decentralized setup. You need strong channels to keep everyone aligned, sharing information regularly, making sure everyone understands the company's goals and vision. It really relies on a culture of trust and transparency. Employees need to feel confident making decisions independently, and leaders need to trust their teams to do so effectively.
So it sounds like there's no one best communication structure. It all depends on the company's specific needs, its goals, its culture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to make things even more interesting, companies rarely stick with one structure forever. They evolve, they adapt as they grow.
Okay, yeah. Things change.
All the time.
Mm.
Think about it. A small startup, right? They might begin with a flat structure. Everyone's involved. It's very agile.
Makes sense.
But then they start to expand. They hire more people, and suddenly they need more layers, so they become taller.
Right, they got to organize somehow.
Exactly. And then later on, they might decide, hey, we need to get some of that agility back, so they delayer, flatten out again. It's a constant process of finding the right structure for the right moment.
It's like a living organism,
Yeah.
constantly adapting to its environment.
Love that analogy. It really highlights how dynamic businesses are, how they need to constantly evolve to stay competitive.
This has been so insightful. It makes you realize that even something that seems simple, like who reports to whom, can have such a huge impact on how a company functions, how people feel about their work.
It's all interconnected, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And to leave you with a final thought, think about the structures you encounter every day, not just at work, but in your personal life too. Schools, clubs, even families. How does communication flow in those settings? Is it effective? Does it feel open and honest? Or does it feel, stifled? Something to think about.
Great point. It's everywhere.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive, everyone. We'll be back soon with more fascinating explorations into the world of business. And don't forget, a huge thank you to Google Notebook LM for the incredible AI assistance and audio dialogue that helped make this content possible. This episode was a PLC strategy production.
Until next time.
See ya.